Welcome, kings and queens, to tonight's Free-Minded Academy session. Yes, we are contributing to a global shift, and we want to. It's almost like we want to cause an avalanche. You know, when you want to call an avalanche, you have to put detonators at strategic location if you want to move the mountain. You want to put detonators at key locations and then synchronize the detonation, so that they deliver a series of powerful punches, and then that's how you move a mountain. So Africa has a dilemma since the first ship docked on the continent of Africa that arrived to take power, and take economy and take our natural assets and resources. Since that time until today, African masses are faced with poverty. The cost of living is on the rise. The gap between the rich and the poor is at its peak. It's the highest it's ever been, especially in South Africa. South Africa is the worst in the global arena. So the gap has become worse than it ever was in history. So it's not just. So, it doesn't help with the global scenario of World War III, where, the usual bullies, America is bullying everybody on that global arena, sending Ukraine to war with Russia and sending Israel to war with Palestine, and, touching, all of those Yemen, fighting for that Suez Canal, even though it belongs to Egypt. But they are fighting for the right of passage. They're like crazy with their allies, the French and the British. Now, since all of these things are impacting global prices, fuel prices, are impacted. Interest rates are impacted. So the cost of living, it's felt by the masses in Africa who have to bear the brunt of giants, the G7 member nations, making decisions that are called democratic decisions. However, it's just a dictatorship that is masked in the form of democracy. Because when you look at the G7 and ask yourself, okay, let's test all of these institutions that we've got today. We're supposed to be living in a democratic era where we have a global peace, because we're all sitting in United Nations, all 195 recognized jurisdictions. We're supposed to have an assembly where we sit peacefully and we make decision in a democratic way, where the majority must rule the world, isn't it? Democracy is about the majority. Everybody must have outright majority to rule, to influence the world. So, does the liberation of the continent of Africa, is it going to be by that democracy, or is it going to be by any means necessary? That is the question we're putting there. So first, to respond to that question, perhaps we must first put, democracy. We must put it there into our court. Let's judge democracy. Has democracy made this world we're living in? 8 billion of us. Are we happy? Are we happy with the democracy? What democracy has achieved? So to answer that question, fortunately, we can even, for a temporal, open the floor and say, tell me, of these 195 recognized jurisdictions, nations who are members of United Nations, And then we talk about these global communities that are meant to facilitate democracy. World Health Organization, World Bank, IMF. These are all institutions of democracy, World Trade Organizations. How have these bodies served our people in our generation? So let's put the groups of people on the scale so that we know, who's voting for this democracy. So we will put a couple of categories. In fact, we're almost going to put it continent, factions. So we're going to say Africa. Africa represented by her sons and daughters on the continent across the 54 nations, and all of the sons and daughters scattered on the globe. So you represent Africa. That includes the slaves that were taken and forcibly removed from the continent, who are now scattered in the North America, Caribbeans, and South America, Australia, New Zealand, wherever, Asia, everybody in Arabic world, because it's not just Europe that was, slave trade, but Arabs as well, equally so. Then the next category of people, how would they feel about democracy? Let's talk about the Arab bloc, the Arab nations. How are they doing as far as democracy is concerned? And then we're going to say the Asian. Let's look at the Asia. Asia is a continent. Let's look at India, China, Japan, South and North Korea, the Philippines, every bloc in Asia, how are they feeling about democracy, then let's look at Europe. Europe, that will include then America and her allies, and British, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. How are they feeling about this democracy? Now, if we were to ask everybody, do we have a blueprint, a model of a nation that is really excelling, its kings or its voted, democratically elected leadership, where citizens are 100% happy? Do we have such a nation that is a blueprint, that is a model of a nation that is happy in democracy? So we will have to judge, that question with the biggest noisemaker. We will look at the West and say they are supposed to display the true blueprint of democracy, right? So all of Europe represents this democracy. So with the biggest instigator as America, is America happy with democracy right now? Are they happy with the system? That is the question. Who of these 195 nations is happy? So if we give an analysis, I think you all have, you can answer this question actually when we open the floor. You will tell us which nation is happy with this democracy. But as far as we know, a lot of if you look at the Arab blocs, they don't really have democracy. They have kings there, and they have strict religious laws. There's no democracy. So it's a different protocol. But the question would be, are they happy? Is the Arab bloc happy with their citizens? Are they happy? Are they happy in their system of economy and governments? Are they happy? When we look at Asia, nations in Asia, are they happy? If we look at Europe, are they happy? Is nations under EU happy? At this point in time, I think all of you think about that, and you may actually answer that question. But from the African point of view, how is Africa feeling with this democracy? So we will respond. I respond as a son of the continent, from the southernmost tip of this continent. My ancestors, they were not happy with the land being occupied by foreigners, so they fought. with the shields and spears, and their blood is on the ground. It testifies of that history. So it was not. So the land and everything else was taken by force. So this is the West. This is the West that since the dawn of time, from ancient times of the Greeks to the Romans, every territory they've taken by force. They didn't come as friends, to trade and make peace and work with all the people and the natives. In fact, all the natives globally, they cry the same cry: foul play. The people came and destroyed, and then later on, when they are done destroying and subjugated everybody, then they say, now we have democracy. By the way, this democracy is according to our rules. We're the one who designed the political system. We're the one who designs this constitution. We're the ones who design your commercial laws. We're the ones who establish your political system and the judges and all of it. It's our lawyers, it's our law, it's our rule book. And then here, appoint whoever you like to run this system. How has Africa performed? Now, we have a history now, 54 nations since Ghana was given its first independence till South Africa, which is the youngest. Have we seen this democracy work for the continent? Have we seen it work for an average man on the street, for the people in our villages, in our township, for the majority of the population? Did it work? Because, democracy, it's about the majority. Now, of course, the true test in South Africa is that the democracy has not yielded economic freedom for our people. We are worse off, even now, than when we began the journey. The prices are even worse now. So actually, the cost of living is worse off now. And, despite the higher salaries, but the impact of the money and the buying power is really worse at this point in time. So, but who is the benefiter of this democracy? So democracy has benefited those who designed it. They really have benefited. The Western nations, Europe and her allies, have benefited immensely because they have amassed global capital based on that blueprint. They have controlled prices. They have controlled commodities. They have dictated terms. G7 nations, they have dictated terms, and they had bullied all so-called institutions that are meant to be a democratic institutions. Now, they buy votes in United Nations. They buy votes in the Security Council. They have power to dictate because they are the biggest contributor, isn't it? Democracy is linked to capitalism as well. It says the guy with the biggest pockets is the one who dictates for the rest because he is the one with the power to appoint politicians and kings. So if I've got money, I can buy land, I can get services, I can get the rights. That's what this democracy has ended up being. It's just a gimmick for the Western looters to carry on looting African resources, dictating terms, using whatever bodies necessary. Now they want to use World Health Organizations to have the power without any vote to dictate terms, and hold and dictate it to governments that are democratically elected. They use United Nations to issue bills, agendas that they want in the global arena, but they push them through these systems. They buy these votes. You're gonna vote for us. They tell African leaders, you're gonna vote this direction or else we are taking that deal and that trade agreement or that grant or that deal. So this is what democracy means in this day. However, uh, when would actually true democracy mean? What would true democracy mean? So true democracy would mean majority must have a bigger say in the day-to-day running of our lives, right? In our economy, in our laws. So if you look at the global arena, if we were honest and we really, really wanted to adhere to democratic values, it means it should have been Africa as a bloc, it should have been India, it should have been China. Those three nations, they at least hold over outright majority on the global arena. That means they should actually have a greater vote in United Nations and in the global economies. They should be on the table and influencing and enjoying the outright majority. But the reality, that's not the case. So the continents that have the masses, the Asia and Africa, are not a big players in the global arena. It's G7 member nations only, and that club is European led. And who is Europe really? It's just minorities. In fact, if we even consider then the people who literally have influence and power. So let's consider the Zionists, because Jews on earth represent 13% of the global population. Now, these are the people who have influence over global capital, over institutions and education, over pharmaceutical directions, vaccines, drugs, who are influencing media and owning and controlling all the companies and the commercial. We know you have to link it back to Zionism and Jews. It doesn't matter what it is. So how can it be then that we are in democracy right now if actually in reality the minority are the one dictating the terms? So that means we this question is real. So how do we then what is the option for Africa's liberation in today's situation? If we look at the West, everywhere they have been, they've taken power by force. World War I, World War II, and since the expansion of the empires, the Greek Empire, then the Roman Empire, they've just went and took territory, took land, and made everybody serve them, pay taxes, and it's never changed to this day. Because Africa, if you look at the outflow of our capital, it's greater than the debt we supposedly have that we owe from the West. So the capital outflow from Africa going into financing and resourcing the global capital. In fact, Africa might as well be the only biggest contributor to a global capital, because it is based on our gold that they print that capital. So your euros, your dollars, your pounds, they only have worth as it's attached to our labor and our natural assets and resources as Africans. So that means for Africa, democracy has not worked, has not changed our paradigm. Now, if democracy has not worked, then how do we achieve liberation of Africa? What does it mean by all means necessary? What are other options? What are other alternatives? So, here are other alternatives. We've seen these things. In the case where nobody is paying attention, the gap between the rich and the poor is just expanding and expanding. There comes a time when the masses say, look, enough is enough. We can't have that agenda anymore. And then when we look at African scenario, the good thing is that the numbers work in our favor. So there is 2 billion of us. So 1:4, it's an African. So we need to amass that power and release that power. And when we look at the global labor force, 2 in 4 is an African. That means we are the one driving the economies of the world. By the way, it also means we are the heavy consumers of those industries and products. So what power does that give us right now as a continent? It means there are other options. We call boycotts, right? Boycotts. So imagine for a second that we say enough is enough. If nobody is listening and nobody is willing to hear Africa speaking as a bloc, that we really truly want to charter things in our own way, and if people do not treat us as equals on the global arena, then we have options of boycott. What happens if Africa decides that we're going to boycott labor? So as long as an industry, an entity, and a brand is owned by Western capital, just for 1 week, we're not going to show up. We're just going to stay in our homes. That's it. In fact, even better, we're not just going to stay in our homes, but we're going to go to our own villages. We're going to go build and work our gardens and plant our own stuff, take a week out and not pay attention to the global capital system. I can tell you now that the global capital system will crash. And then imagine the second power, buying power. So if you were to say, okay, from now on, we redirecting our buying power, we're no longer going to buy any brand that belongs to that Western capital with all its spider web. We boycott. We will buy our own. That is power. That power is non-violent. Both stay away, boycotts. It's peaceful. It just simply means we can cripple a global economic system because we will withhold our labor and we will withhold our buying power. That's it. If Africa were to do that, the entire global economies will fall. Because right now, 2 in 4 is Africans that are pushing and making and keeping this global system running, the global economies in motion. So if Africa diverts its 2 in 4 strength to itself, to build its own industry and refocus on establishing itself and boycott the West, the Western system, the Western system will fall without shooting a single bullet, literally without firing a single bullet. It's the same thing when we reflect on our South African politics. You see, if the politicians will not listen to the masses, if ANC continues not to listen to the masses and continues to keep the will of the minority as if they are appointed by the minority, if the ANC and DA continue to despise, the issue of unfair distribution of natural resources, land, access to economy, and South African capital, it needs to follow the demographics. That's what democracy means. Democracy means if there's 62 million of us, we all are equal shareholders of the land and resources of this country we call South Africa. Therefore, all of us can make decisions and have access to natural resources and to a capital to beneficiate and to contribute and earn equal value from our labors, But today, what happens? You're not going to find a Caucasian in South Africa in any grade that is paid the same as an African. Even if you're a doctor, even if you're an engineer, even if you're a lawyer, even if you're an accountant. In South Africa, any African doctor less than the European counterparts in our own land. Even worse, if you come from Zimbabwe or Eswatini, you are even paid less. So the question now is the hour of a Caucasian more worthy and more valuable than the hour of an African? Even if we are actually more learned and more advanced in our knowledge, Even now, when we consider that, the notion of privatization comes because, Africans cannot run these systems. So white supremacy can write these systems. Give it to us, privatize it. If you say privatize, but you do not give access to capital, what do you mean? So do you mean the people who control capital must just then loot, take every asset, and then enslave us? Because as soon as things are privatized, people care about profits. They don't really care about the masses. That they want to pay less wages, isn't it? They don't even want this minimum wage, by the way, which is 4,000 in South African terms today. Now, those are the dynamics that are real. So, what means then does Africa or South Africa have to actually break and get out of the system that oppresses him, that pays him 4,000 rand a month? It means South Africans, which is 81% of the natives, they need to boycott working for in any organization and any operation that does not belong to the natives, that belongs to foreign interest, British, American, European, any brand that does not love us as a people, we need to boycott it. And therefore, we focus our talents and resources in building our own brand. Let's go back and produce our own food in our villages. The funny model is that in DRC Congo, people are working hard under unsafe conditions, mining cobalt and carrying it by head in sacks to go for a pay which is less than $1 a day. So what do they do with that dollar after they've worked so hard they died there in those mines? The conditions are appalling. It's sickness. You're breathing unclean air, unclean water. It's polluted. It's toxic. It's dangerous. For what? For $1 a day. Okay, what do you do with this dollar? You go buy potatoes to eat, and then you go back in the mine and dig again. What about it if you just went on this fertile land of Congo that has so much rich soil and so much water abundant? Just plant those potatoes yourself and you have food. Build your own shelters with natural means. There's forestry, trees, timber, even earth, soil. There's grass, whatever. You build your shelter, you produce your own food. Then when you create more than enough for you, then you can sell and make that dollar selling tomatoes rather, or potatoes, or poultry, or eggs, or milk, or whatever. So why don't we think if we do that, we will have a quality of life? Because then I'm in charge of my destiny. I have my own land. I build my own estate. I develop my own livestock that I can hand over to my children and my children's children. But the fact that I'm mining this cobalt there and I'm carrying it by head, there's nothing I can save out of it. It means I have no inheritance for my children. It means I'm a slave. I'm just working for food, for the bowl of soup. I am locked in a situation where I'm actually there's not net wealth that is happening. I'm just working to eat, working to pay the expensive accommodation in the city, pay electricity and water, pay transport, and then take the rest of it and go give it to white capital, buying Spar, buying Woolworths, buying ShopRites. Even the clothes I'm wearing, I buy them from Ackermans, Pep. Who's Pep? So it's like we are caught in a system where we are working just to take that money again and pay it back to the same people. So it's a forever going cycle. So how do we liberate ourselves from that cycle? It means Africa needs to stop working for Western interest. For the first time, Africa needs to look at itself and say, I need to work for myself. Let me first produce my own food. Let me make my own clothes. Let me breed my livestock, my chickens, my eggs, and let me sell excess. Because yes, the West needs that food. They need that beef. They need those chickens in any case. They need the stuff where, they do need that cobalt, but they don't need it as just like that. We can beneficiate it because it's ours and then sell them what they need, which is value added. That's it. Africa can liberate itself right now without firing a single bullet in that regard. However, so the question is on the floor. Uh, how will Africa liberate itself? Is it by democracy, by a ballot, or is it by any means necessary? So the vote is on for tonight. So as you take on the mic, tell us your vote. Democracy or by any means necessary? What is your feeling? And then substantiate why you say what you say, why you feel what you feel. So let's go around the table. Take just your moment, state your vote, and tell us why you vote that way. The floor is open. Go for it, King Arnold.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity. 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, we had one of our elderly king who did a presentation about federal and so forth, right? At the end of the presentation, this matter was discussed, but we didn't go into details. You were doing some you were summarizing the presentation, and then you said that somehow we should obtain our liberation by other means. And our elderly presenter, I've forgotten the name, he opposed you in all fairness, and then he didn't beat about the bush. He said, my dear brother, you are wrong. He said he doesn't encourage or whether will he support your statement. Are you able, more or less, so that for those who were not present, are you able to summarize that discussion regarding this topic? I hope I'm well understood, I'm sure.
Yes, King, you are understood, but let's put context to what Prof was saying. So let's put that context. The choice that we were giving the Prof was there were two. We were only giving two. We didn't open, say what are the means necessary. So we only spoke that you either do it by ballot or by bullet, which meant coup. So coup means bullet, it means by war, you take it. So then the Prof was 100% objecting the bullet, that cannot be. It has to be by ballot. So I think, to be fair, the discussion was between ballot or bullet. Now, of course, nobody loves war. None of us love war. Is there other alternative for African liberation? No? Or is war part of the solution? Should all other means necessarily fail? Maybe that's the question. So the platform is open. But to be fair, none of us likes war. We don't like it in Palestine and Israel. We don't like it in Ukraine and Russia. They are all fighting for their liberation. The Palestinian people are fighting for their liberation by war, and but there is genocide. It's not even war, because if you come with missiles and one comes with homemade weapons, it's no different to our scenario with shields and spears with bullets. against bullet. That's a genocide. It's not war. But at least Russia and Ukraine, it's a fair fight. However, is that what we want? Is that the means for Africa, for African liberation? So perhaps that is in a nutshell. Today we're extending that and say by any means necessary. So we're no longer giving you a choice that says bullet. So we're saying what other means necessary can we achieve African liberation? So maybe let's put it that way. The floor is open. Queen Busisiwe.
Good evening, kings and queens. Am I audible?
Loud and clear, Queen.
Thank you. To add on to the clarity that you made, King Fanelo, about the coup. At this point, as a nation, we have no choice. We have no choice but to liberate ourselves by any means necessary. And that, unfortunately, might include the barrel of the gun. However, are we even in position? Are we ready? Are we prepared? So our liberation includes preparedness of the current. The looters will come with their barrels of guns and burn your farms and kill your women, your men, and steal and take women and children and rape women. You have to be prepared to protect your nation. So I will vote definitely by any means necessary. We do not have the luxury of choosing one or the other. It is dictated by the West. And we need to respond in a way that says we know that we are in a revolution. I will pause.
Yeah, it's radical coming from a queen. Mothers, they are usually nurses. When a queen speaks with that authority and a voice, then you know most enough is enough. That means this revolution will no longer be by ballot. It's a 7th time we went on the ballot as South Africa. I don't know how many times Ghana went to a ballot. Has the ballot helped for Ghana? They're the oldest democracy, so let's ask them. But as far as South Africa is concerned, it's a 7th time we went to a ballot. But my township where I was born, it's still exactly the same as when I was 2 months old there. Now I'm wondering if the ballot works for me. So it means for me, it's time for something that is different. However, we're asking the question, okay, what is this other means necessary mean? Because by the way, if we talk about coup, the peaceful coup, I think one of the most peaceful coup I've ever had happened here in South Africa. Olomisa was a general in one of these Bantustans, and he learned that one of the South African businessmen paid the parliamentary 2 million, and they distributed among all the parliamentarian of his state. They all got 50,000 each, so that this Sol Kesner business tycoon will have rights in that nation to put his own casinos. So Sol Kesner owns the Sun casinos and hotels and gambling spaces. Now, Bantu, as a general at the time, a military general of his nation, he got this intel that, yo, this has happened. Sol Kosna has paid everybody 50,000. What they did, they gathered together with some of the leaders, according to their chain of command, and they went and investigated with the head of state. They arrived nicely at his house, and they said, this is what we hear. And then now, if this is true, we will ask you to resign. And then you can go to South Africa and tell them you have resigned because of that. And that was a simple coup. And then from there on, they wrote letters to all the MPs and say resign. And then they went and made an announcement on the radio that right now there's a transition. Because of this, all the parliamentary 100%, they all been dissolved. And right now, there's an interim solution. So that was the peaceful, not a single person died. There was no war, there was nothing. So now, what are the chances that South Africa could have responded with military and go back? Because as soon as their president went and ran into Pretoria in South Africa and said it's a coup, South Africa could have retaliated and went inside there and bulldozed itself. So, well, the coup will always put the element of war. So perhaps the question is, are we ready for that? Maybe the Queen is asking a right question. The question is, if we are planning liberation of our people, should we at the same time be training ourselves for military, for war? Maybe that's the question. Because maybe the Afrikaners are doing that as we speak. They are having camps, they are training their young people in all kinds of machine guns and artillery. They are training them for war. It's only us who are sleeping in townships. We are talking liberation, but we're not prepared to fire a bullet. We don't even know how to fire that bullet, or we don't even have access to that. So perhaps the question is, shouldn't Africa be preparing itself to defend itself? Literally, I mean, every nation has done it. America is bullying the world because of military. China, because of military. North Korea, Iran, because of nuclear warhead. So everybody defends his own. I mean, Russia, everybody can defend themselves and their sovereignty. If they are ready for war, are we ready for war? Maybe that's the question. The floor is open.
I don't know if I'm heard.
You are heard. Go ahead, King.
Thank you very much. This is Kabbalah here. So I just have a few comments to make in response to the main question of today. The first comment is regarding your last question as to, or your last comment as to nobody likes to fight. I mean, nobody wants, wants the war. I also believe that nobody wants to wake up in the morning to go to work. But as you have been explaining yourself, we are in the situation that requires or obliges us to wake up early in the morning to go into the factories where we are working and all those places to work, because in the capitalist economy, everything is commoditized, and if you don't have the paper money, you almost can't function. So it means the same way that we are forced, even though we don't like it, to go to work, we may be also forced to go for war, even though nobody likes to fight. The first law of human nature is self-preservation. Even animals, when you put it in a corner and it doesn't know where to run, it's gonna bite you back. I mean, that's the first law of nature, for all living things. So now, as to liberation by democracy, by all means, I think when you understand the world, you see that things are very clear. One thing that makes sense in the world today is not even democracy, it's power. It's just power, because the power is what rules the world. The power is what governs the world today. And the basic definition of power in the current context today is nothing else but the ability of violence. So it means that the power is defined today by the ability of one nation to inflict violence upon another nation. If we say that the US is a powerful country, it's not because they have a morality over the African morality, simply because they do have the capacity to inflict violence upon other country and other countries and destroy them. The same with Russia, China, France, all these countries who possess nuclear weapons, which then is a symbol of their power. So that's how the power is defined in the world today. That's why those countries who have nuclear power, they almost have that uh, luxury to go wherever they want to go, to plunder the resources, to remove the leaders who are in power, to put the leaders they want to put in those places, simply because they do have the monopoly of violence. Now, you don't really believe that you, by casting the votes, whatever you call democracy, you will be able to get out of the domination of these people by casting the votes without expecting any kind of retaliation, any kind of violence from them. So, in that case, I think African people need to be prepared for violence, even though our strategy should begin by, democratic means or political strategies to liberate ourselves. But the ultimate goal, or the ultimate, um, I think, yes, goal will be that we need to be prepared for violence, because we must understand that Europe, by the way of enslaving Africans, has made itself slave of Africans. What am I saying? If you build your economy by using cheap labor, by using slaves, you are automatically making yourself the slave of the cheap labor, the slave of the people you are enslaving, because without them, you almost can't survive, because you have to depend on the cheaper labor to build your industry, to function in your economy. You need to depend on the slaves for you to run your economy. So once those slaves stand up to say, okay, enough is enough, then your economy is automatically threatened, and you're going to have to try to do something to recuperate the situation. And one of the things that you want to do is inflict violence on those slaves in order to keep them in order. And I think that's one of the function, or the functions that democracy has been doing, is to keep people in order, good slaves, obedient slaves. That's why they blame too much coup d'etats, which means when people try to stay out of line and try to think independently to do something different. So I think the world is a very violent place, awkward place, and cannot be dealt with in a way that theory of democracy explains to us. We got to be prepared all eventualities, and violence should be on the agenda as well. Thank you very much. I'll stop here.
No, thank you, King. We know our ancestors died, they bled. They even came with shields and spears against bullets, fighting and standing the ground. So maybe sometimes to defend yourself, I think in the account of defending yourself, your sovereignty and your land, you may be pushed to fight, because we did not go to Europe to take their land and their asset. They came to South Africa. Now they want to dictate terms by the minorities and tell us, as the landlords, take our land and tell us how they're going to do it. So that's an insult. Perhaps the violence has already been done to us. Perhaps we've already been paralyzed and put in cages. Perhaps we are in a slave cages, because how can it be that in this day and age, 78% of our arable land is in the hands of minorities, 7% of the people? How can it be that at least 90% of the economy is in their hands, the capital. How can it be? How can it be that the very political parties that are on the ballot are funded by the same families? How can it be that all the monies, the millions that are financing our political parties comes from the same capital? How can it be? That's a state capture that needs to be investigated in any case. However, it means perhaps it's time for a different solution. Then the assignment that we need to ask ourselves, what are we ready to do? The floor is open. We are having a discussion, so every value, every opinion, every idea we value. We are testing where we're at, but we are not talking for the sake of talking. We want to shift the game in our time, in our lifetime. We want to liberate Africa in our lifetime. We don't want to do it when we're dead. We want to do it now for our children. So we can't wait. Time is not on our side. So yes, let's talk. The floor is open. Is there any takers? Welcome. I see we have Undlovukazi Queen. Welcome. Be initiated and welcome to this platform. We value every other opinion on any topic to transform our minds. So you're welcome to open your mic and greet and share your comments or your thoughts. Welcome, King Afo. The floor is still open. Do we have any takers? Do we have any comments on the discussion? What other people think?
Can I come in?
Go for it, Queen.
Oh,
and welcome,
everyone. Look, by any means, revolution is not kind. You can't read it on the script. We've tried through the ballot. Obviously, there will be resistance for one reason. As Kabbalah has said it clearly, power doesn't come easy, and it doesn't go easy as well. By saying that, I am saying we've exhausted. We've done it. We've tried the script. We've tried to be kind. We've tried to be nice. Unfortunately, revolution is not so sophisticated. You need to be hard and harsh. I thank you.
There you have it, kings and queens. You see now, when you hear the queens speaking like that, then you know most it's time for something that is different. King Coffee. For now, everybody is saying by all means necessary, Africa needs to liberate itself. What do you say, King Coffee?
Well, good evening, all royalties. Thank you so much, Infantino, for giving me the opportunity. I think the queens have elaborated it so well, and I don't know if our mothers and sisters, our wives, think that it is too much. What can we, the son, say apart from getting ourselves prepared? Because the truth of the matter is, it is not easy to see your land being taken away from you, your children being exploited, whilst yourself, you only have your eyes to cry. Personally, I am of the idea that what has been taken by power can only be given back by power. There is no way you come and rape me, kill people, take things from me, and now ask me to use a soft approach to go to court to sign deal to get back my stuff. It is not done anywhere. I have the example of the former Dahomey, which is actually the Republic of Benin. When they went to France and said they want their artifacts, they want all the things that has been stolen during colonization and slavery, And then the French government told them that they have to go through a process. They have to set a committee to even verify to see whether if they send those stuff to them, they will be able to take care of it. If they have the museum and all those stuff. So for me, I think it is a big joke when we think that we can take things from these people who by nature are violent people whilst we are not prepared. Now the question is, what kind of preparation are we doing? Are we prepared enough? What are the tools at our disposal now? Are we gonna go to the same people that are oppressing us to provide the tools to us? Are we gonna fall back on ourselves, close our door, and then behind our closed curtains, we prepare ourselves and then forge our weapons in secret? Or do we now need to go and get authorization from the World Organization, that the so-called World Organization that they control, to allow us to build nuclear weapons? Those are the questions we should be asking ourselves. And at this moment, are we prepared enough? Those are my questions, because it is obvious that the only way out of this is power, and power is not a joke. We're gonna fight for it. Are we prepared? Do we have the tools? How do we get the tools? Those are my questions at this moment. But when it comes to any means necessary, I am more certain than ever that power is the only way out. So how do we get there?
Okay, thank you so much for your contribution, kings and queens. So yes, we are about to wrap the discussion, but Queen Busisiwe, I see your mic is open. Did you want to come for a second round?
Yes, please.
Okay, go for it.
The preparedness that we are exposed to at this point in time as African people, having just come out of the elections in South Africa, my vote, I have voted, and with my vote, I have one request. The political party that I have voted for, my one request is to take 18-year-olds between 18 and 23 for military training, and it should be compulsory. That is my one request, and that is the reason why I voted. And the political party that I have voted for have this information, because I have sent an email to say I have one request for my one vote, or three in this case, because there were 3 ballot papers. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23 go for military training whilst they decide which career they want to follow. As an 18-year-old, you don't know what career to follow. That time is critical for us to prepare for what is coming. And that, for me, is a step in the direction of preparing ourselves for the eventuality. I thank you.
Actually, I love that suggestion, because it solves, you're hitting a couple of birds with one stone. You are solving the immediate unemployment of youth, youth loitering around, unused potential. You're taking everybody, you're putting them in camps, you are paying them, and you are training them. 2, you are creating health, because people, while they are there, they eat well, they can produce their own food in the military camps, they can learn a lot of things. Survival skills to defend, health, mental issues, and discipline. And soldiers are trained even how to be hygienic, to be clean, make up your bed and shine your shoes and dress right. That level of discipline is something that is good. But also, mental issue, to love yourself as an African and be patriotic about your nation. And the more you do that, you will solve crime, you will solve all of that, because as soon as all of those young people are in camps, then there's nobody on the street to be Amapara. You know, we've got Amapara now in South Africa. And Amapara is just our sons and daughters that are idling on our city centers, washing cars, pushing trolleys. We don't want our youth to be doing that. We want our youth to be designing aircrafts, you know, fighter jets, missile guiding system. You know, they should be sending in satellites into space, into orbit for our communication. They should be gathering our intelligence on the ground, learning stuff, information. They should be helping now there's weather, there are storms right now, because I'm told there's rough rain in KZN, in Eastern Cape, and a couple of places. Now we need the army equipment, tents and things as to recover sites that are affected by disaster. We need the military there, but you know, they should have been part of this disaster management programming and planning. But instead, our sons are sleeping on the street corners. They are smoking, substance abuse. You know, they are just doing nonsense stuff, stealing, break-ins, doing useless things. We're wasting their time and their talent. So what the best option that the very government we voted right now must now do the same thing. America, the biggest budget, the biggest employer in the world is the US Army. In fact, they employ over almost just under 3 million people. China is the second biggest army employer, over 2 million. So they pay the bill. That's why the military can get married and have nice bond houses and buy cars, and they are physically fit, they are patriotic about their country. They swear for their nation. They would defend their nation with their life, because the nation takes care of them, you know. Maybe that's a right ask, Queen, that the government must just enroll everybody from the street into these military camps and actually train them into various specialization, engineers, cybersecurity, tech, war tech. We should be making our own guns, our own. Awusukana madoda sithi uZulu kwakuthi kwakushaya ingoma kuthiwa kwanyakaza umkhondo wenkonyana kaNdaba. Uyazi uZulu omnyama wathi usuthu athi hebe usuthu hebe usuthu athi kwanyakaza umkhondo wenkonyana kaNdaba. Bese manje ke with the days of ANC they were using AK-47 Russian rifle. Bathi hithe ngilele hayi wadali hayi hithe ngivuka hayi waqhuma ibhomu hayi. Hey, I think we need to go back to the camps and prepare ourselves. But anyway, we live in a different era. Technology, we need to be ahead of the game. We need to learn. We need to be skillful. We need to learn from a number of nations. We need to be learning and cross-pollinating. We've got BRICS who have capabilities and expertise, you know, so we can be cross-learning how to build these things. You know, that's what we should be doing at this point in time, not wasting time. So I agree. Shall we park it at that for tonight as a discussion, unless there's a last comment, anybody who's burning to have the last say, and then we close the session for tonight. I don't want to leave everybody out.
Well, King Vanello, I'll love you to sing that song again, you know. Well,
you like to do what?
I would like you to sing that song again. I don't understand the meaning, but it sounds so profound, and I would love to hear it again.
You should hear our former president, Umsholozi, uthi mshini wami, mshini wami, awu mshini wami, mshini wami. Biza umshini wakhe manje. Awu mshini wami we baba. So it's time. It's time.
Okay,
that's
so
what it is.
I think thank you so much. I think at this moment, just as we talk about it, we can all agree that the majority of the people here think that we have to fight iron with iron, and therefore we need to prepare. So when we wrap it up from here, every day, every second of our life, every skill that we have, everything that we learn, any action we take, and any decision we make, we have to have this in mind that we are fighting a war, a silent war in which we are not prepared enough. And then now that we are preparing ourselves, and every step of ourselves should be a preparation to a war that has been against us for so long. For me, I think the preparation should be both individually and collectively. So every one of us here should look around where we live, the tools that are available, and whatever we can use it for, and then join hand with others. Thank you so much. I'll end it my here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, King Coffee. I think I want to wrap it up on that note. So the reality is we are at war. Perhaps the reason we're having this conversation is that we want every one of us listening to be prepared. So if you are working for a Western company, a Western brand, take yourself as a spy there. Just be there to learn, to see how it's done, so that we come and do it for ourselves. Let's prepare our generation to do it for ourselves. We want to build our own laptops, we want to build our own smartphones, our own cars, our own electric vehicles, our own industries, our own seeds, our own farming, our own technology. We no longer want Western IPs. In fact, I repeat, we need to boycott Western IPs. I mean, we can't at one side be saying these people are oppressing us and looting, but on the other hand, we want their stuff and their culture and their identity. So perhaps we have to divorce their movies. We have to make our own movies, make our own music, write our own books, write our own curriculums, and build our own university. In fact, if there's anything that this generation needs to do, is detach yourself from the Western system. Son and daughter of this continent, look inside yourself, look among your people, love yourself, love your people, collaborate, learn, and come back and build Africa. You know, don't just camp there in the Western territory and it's nice now to live in Europe. We don't want any more brain drain, intellectual property flight out of Africa, natural asset flight out of Africa, capital flight out of Africa. No, we don't want that. We want the reverse. We want global capital to come to Africa and stay in Africa and build African economies and see that our townships, our villages are gonna be eco-villages, beautiful settings, clean, no more pollution. Everybody is gonna be neat. Everybody will do maintenance, maintain our streets, maintain our homes, our yards, clean up, and let's eat healthy. Let's exercise. Let's remember who we are. We are kings and queens. Nobody else has a solution for you, and nobody is in charge of your destiny but you. That's what the title of being a king. The buck stops with you. If you're a queen, who's higher than you? So the buck stops with us. So I think that is the mental mode that we need to operate in. We can no longer depend on the West. Right now, we will depend on ourselves and work. We will go learn from whoever is willing to share knowledge with us, especially the Eastern allies. BRICS is here, so let's tap into BRICS and let's learn. Let's go build it and do it ourselves. We don't want to be owned by nobody ever again. So we're going to park it at that. Thank you so much for your time and for this hour. Let's go preach this message. Take it to the ends of the earth. It's time for African revolution. It's time for Africa to stand together. Peace and prosperity among her people. That's what it is. Let's love ourselves first. I like it when the minority says, they use this agenda when they say you must close the borders in South Africa. They say, when the flight is crashing, you're supposed to put the oxygen to yourself first before you help your neighbor. Yeah, it's correct for Africa. Africa needs to put the oxygen to her own sons and daughters first before we entertain Europe. It's correct. It must be that way. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, kings and queens. Let's go do it.